In the early morning hours, while the sun was still rising, Tommy, Lily, and Max gathered in Max's workshop. The workshop was a large and brightly lit room filled with various inventions. The walls were adorned with old maps, scientific posters, and interesting items from different time periods. Max stood by a large device in the center of the room, surrounded by lights and adorned with complex buttons and dials, shimmering with a metallic gleam. Tommy excitedly circled around the device and said, "This is truly incredible, Max. You've built a time machine that will take us to the prehistoric era." Lily, standing beside Max and adjusting the device's settings, said, "I hope everything goes according to plan. Meeting dinosaurs face to face will be amazing." Max adjusted his glasses and replied, "Yes, I've checked everything multiple times. This machine will take us exactly to the period we want." Tommy, unable to hide his excitement, said, "Come on, let's get started. I can't wait any longer." Max pressed a large button to activate the machine. A faint hum began to rise around them. The lights on the machine flickered, and metallic parts began to move. Lily touched the control panel to make the final adjustments. "Okay, everything is ready. Time travel is starting," she said. The machine began to make a louder noise. A bright halo of light formed around them, growing larger. Tommy, Lily, and Max stepped toward the center of the machine. Suddenly, everything around them became blurry, colors merged together, and it felt as though the flow of time was shifting. Their hearts raced as they seemed to hang suspended in the air for a moment. Tommy, with excitement, said, "This is really happening. We're going to the prehistoric era." Lily, carefully, said, "We need to stay calm. The world of dinosaurs might be full of dangers." Max, with a reassuring tone, said, "Don't worry. I designed this machine considering all possibilities. We'll be safe." The bright light suddenly faded, and they found themselves in the midst of a forest filled with towering trees. They couldn't believe their eyes. Everything was colossal and ancient. The sounds of birds, distant animal roars, and the rustling of the wind among the trees made the environment feel even more real. Tommy, looking around in awe, said, "We did it. We're really in the prehistoric era." Lily, taking a deep breath, said, "This is incredible. Everything is so much more vivid and real than what we saw in fossils." As the three friends prepared to embark on a new adventure in the world of dinosaurs, they examined their surroundings with excitement and curiosity. The adventure was just beginning, and who knew what surprises awaited them? Let's continue the story from Tommy's perspective. "Hello, I'm Tommy, and I'll be leading you through this adventure. We're going on a journey into the world of dinosaurs. With me are Lily, whose intelligence always amazes us, and Max, whose technology makes our tasks easier. We are the Dino Explorers. Today was a day for a new adventure as Dino Explorers." The bright light suddenly faded, and when we opened our eyes, we found ourselves in the midst of a forest filled with towering trees. Everything was so enormous that we couldn't believe our eyes. It was as if we had traveled back in time and stepped into the prehistoric era. The trees around us reached up towards the sky, their branches striving to touch the heavens. The leaves rustled in the wind, and the sounds of birds and distant animal roars made the environment even more realistic. My heart raced in my chest as I couldn't help but marvel at this incredible view. This is truly amazing," I said, my eyes wide with wonder. Lily, standing next to me, was quickly jotting down notes in her notebook. "Tommy, look at this. These trees must be at least 60 million years old," she said excitedly. Max, meanwhile, pulled out his device and began scanning the surroundings. "Yes, we're exactly in the period we targeted. Everything went as planned," he said with pride. I took a step forward and began examining the area more closely. The smell of the earth was different. It was as if there was an aroma coming from the depths of history. The sunlight filtering through the leaves created golden patterns on the ground. Small creatures wandering around caught my attention. Some were insect-sized, while others resembled small lizards. "Look at this, there are really prehistoric creatures here," I said, pointing to a small creature crawling on the trunk of a tree. Lily came over and looked carefully. "I've never seen this type before. It might be a new species not recorded in the records," she said, unable to hide her excitement. After walking for a while, we came across a colossal brontosaurus. It was so enormous that we could hardly believe our eyes. In the shadow of giant trees, at the base of a high ridge, we saw the immense silhouette of this ancient creature. With its massive, long neck and huge body, the brontosaurus stood like a giant in the depths of the forest. Each of its steps made the ground tremble, and the leaves of the trees rustled. Max carefully set up his device and started scanning. This species typically feeds on gigantic leaves. It's quite harmless, he said. On the device's screen, colorful graphs appeared, showing the vegetation and movements around the brontosaurus. Lily excitedly pulled out her notebook and began observing the brontosaurus closely. As her pencil danced quickly across the page, she said, "This is amazing. Thanks to its long neck, the brontosaurus can easily reach leaves from tall trees. This feature sets it apart from other dinosaurs." I watched the gigantic creature with admiration. The brontosaurus's smooth, brown skin glistened slightly under the sunlight. It was slowly grazing, continuing to pluck and eat large leaves with its mouth. Its body was so wide it looked like it could fit inside a bus. "It's quite impressive how such a large creature can be so peaceful and calm," I said, taking a deep breath. Lily looked up and said, "Besides being calm and harmless, the impact of this species on its ecosystem is significant. The contribution of these massive creatures to their environment is incredible." Max, turning off his device while continuing to observe the brontosaurus's movements, said, "My current data shows that this brontosaurus lives in a herd. There are likely other individuals nearby." We slowly approached and hid behind a tree a few steps away from the brontosaurus. The giant creature's slow movements and peaceful demeanor made the silence of the forest quite soothing. The smaller plants and animals around also moved freely without fearing the brontosaurus. "This is a perfect opportunity to study this magnificent creature and observe the surrounding ecosystem," I said. "It's a chance to experience a real prehistoric world." Lily excitedly said, "I don't want to miss this opportunity. What we learn here will give us more insights into dinosaurs." Max, with more caution, said, "Yes, and with real-time data. This will be invaluable for our scientific research." The peaceful movements of the brontosaurus and the calmness of the surrounding vegetation made this moment even more special. While we were filled with great excitement, we were also savoring this unique piece of the prehistoric world. Lily continued taking notes in her notebook, saying, "This was truly thrilling, but we need to be careful. We're strangers in this world." As we continued to explore and wander around, I once again realized how important friendship and teamwork are. The world of dinosaurs was full of dangers and excitement, but I knew that as long as we were together, we could overcome any challenge. Max pulled out a bunch of gadgets as usual and started scanning the area. When he opened his large, metallic bag, he pulled out various devices, sensors, and scanners. These devices resembled small sci-fi tools with blinking lights, strange sounds, and different data displays. Max carefully set up each device and began scanning. Colorful holograms appeared around us, showing underground layers, vegetation, and animal movements. "Just as I suspected," Max said, without taking his eyes off the screen. "There must be a lot of herbivorous dinosaurs living in this area." Curious, I approached him and looked at the holograms. "These look really amazing. Can you identify the species here?" I asked. Max pressed a button to enlarge the image on the screen. "According to the current data, there are large herbivores here like Brontosaurus, Triceratops, and Stegosaurus," he said. "There are also smaller, fast-moving herbivores. Look, there should be a group of Hypsilophodon over there," he said, pointing to a small group of fast-moving creatures on the screen. Lily pulled out her notebook and started writing quickly. "This is a fantastic discovery. Herbivorous dinosaurs usually live in large herds. This is important for their safety," she said. Max pulled out another device and placed it on the ground. The device detected movements below the soil and projected them onto the holograms. "There's also plenty of vegetation here. This makes it a perfect habitat for herbivores," he said, looking at the device's screen. I took a step back and surveyed the surroundings. The giant trees, lush plants, and the small creatures moving around. Everything was so vibrant and real that it was hard not to be in awe. This place is truly incredible. Being in the prehistoric era is an experience beyond imagination, I said, taking a deep breath. Lily bent down to examine some plants. Look at these plants. They're exactly the same as the ones we saw in fossils, she said, carefully picking up a leaf. After performing one last scan, Max packed up his devices. Okay, we're done here. Now let's venture deeper and try to find other species, he said. Excitedly, I nodded. Yes, let's continue. Who knows what else we'll discover, I said. Just then, we heard a loud, roaring noise from a distance. The roar caused vibrations in the ground as it passed through the trees, and it was strong enough to make our hearts race. Everyone froze instantly. As we looked around with fear, it felt as if time had stopped. Seeing Max's and Lily's anxious faces behind me kindled a fire of courage within me. Lily, Max, what could that sound be? As you heard, it's very close, I said, my voice trembling slightly but determined. Lily furrowed her brows and looked around cautiously. That's definitely the sound of a giant dinosaur. Such noises are usually made by large predators, she said, her voice trembling. Max, checking his devices in a panic, said, we need to use the device to better understand this sound. Maybe this massive creature is moving and could be nearby, he said. Graphs showing sound waves and vibrations appeared on his screen. We slowed our pace and cautiously moved toward the sound. With each step, we could hear the rustling of small animals scurrying under the leaves. The noise was getting closer, and we began to move more carefully, quickening our steps. Surrounding us were towering trees, winding roots, and broad leaves, creating a dense canopy that covered everything. As we got closer to the sound, a massive shadow from the depths of the forest became clearer. The trees were shaking, and the ground was trembling. Our fear was outweighed by our curiosity. I took a brave step forward to get a closer look. Let's see what it is, I said, my voice firm. I gathered my courage, took the lead, and began to move slowly. Lily and Max followed closely behind, remaining alert. After passing a series of bushes, the shadow of a massive T-Rex appeared behind us. Its eyes were sharp, and its teeth were large and frightening. It was emitting deep, roaring sounds, and each step it took shook the ground. Small dinosaurs around it were fleeing in a panic, leaving the forest in chaos. Lily, holding her breath, said, "It's a T-Rex. We need to be careful. We might have to move quickly." Max, quickly shutting down his device and searching for a place to hide, said, "We need to come up with a plan. We have to make this beast lose sight of us." We threw ourselves behind a giant tree, trying to hold our breath and stay still. The T-Rex continued to patrol the path ahead, its enormous feet shaking the ground. For a moment, we seized the chance to evade the predator's sight. "What do we do now?" I asked, anxiously. Lily, calming down a bit, said, "We need to distract the creature somehow. Maybe we should try moving to the other side of the forest." Max, turning his eyes to his screen, said, "Perhaps we can use these devices to stir up the other small dinosaurs around. That might help distract it." As we watched the T-Rex's movements, we began to devise a plan. Each of us had to be brave and cautious to escape this enormous predator. Lily suddenly whispered in a panic, "Tommy, we need to hide immediately. The T-Rex's vision is sensitive to movement. If we stay still, it might not notice us," she said. The fear in her voice felt like a slowly spreading anxiety. I quickly looked around and started moving behind the tree where the massive Brontosaurus was located. At that moment, a roar echoed deeply through the trees. My eyes spotted a gigantic shadow in the sky. I could feel the T-Rex's size and the approaching danger. My heart was racing in my chest, and my breaths grew deeper. "Hurry, over here," I said, pulling Lily and Max towards a thicket. We squeezed between the thick leaves of the bush and tried to hide behind the trunk of a giant tree. The dense foliage of the bushes concealed us somewhat, but we still needed to be careful. Lily hid behind the bush and fixed her eyes on the T-Rex. "We have to stay perfectly still. This massive creature is sensitive to even the smallest movements," she said, covering her face with her hands. Max's face next to her was also pale with worry. Max darkened the screen of his device and spoke quietly. The light from the screen could attract the T-Rex's attention. "We need to turn everything off," he said as he turned off the screen. We slowly focused on the sound of the T-Rex. The thudding of its footsteps was getting closer, shaking the ground and causing the surrounding area to tremble. The leaves and bushes shivered as the massive feet moved over them. We found a small gap between a few large leaves and focused our eyes on the T-Rex's enormous body. The giant creature was moving slowly, scanning its surroundings. "We need to keep an eye on the T-Rex's movements. Everything could change at any moment," I said quietly. The T-Rex stopped right in front of a tree's roots. As it turned its massive head around, it emitted a deep, roaring sound. Its eyes were sharp and flickering, surveying its surroundings like a giant predator. The wind made its enormous belly sway slightly. The sight was almost like a nightmare come to life. Lily, holding her breath, said, "We must stay motionless." Even the slightest movement could catch the T-Rex's attention, her voice trembling. Max, without taking his eyes off the closed screen of his device, said, "We need to stay calm. We might need to come up with a plan to distract this creature," he said, analyzing the T-Rex's movements carefully. As time passed, the T-Rex moved a little further away, and its roars faded into the depths of the forest. My heart was still pounding, but I felt we had passed the greatest danger. "What should we do now?" I asked, scanning the area carefully. Lily, slowly tearing her eyes away from the last spot where the T-Rex was seen, said, "We should wait here for a while. We shouldn't move until the T-Rex is completely gone." Max, turning his device back on, said, "The T-Rex seems to have moved away, but we still need to be careful. We might need to make a plan." We waited silently for a while, watching as the giant creature moved farther away. As the T-Rex's roars diminished, we began to feel a bit safer. Each of us understood the importance of being cautious in this historic world after the dangerous moments. Max, quickly gathering his equipment, looked worried. "I need a few minutes to return with the time machine. We need to do something," he said, his voice urgent and panicked. Hearing this, we looked at each other in panic. Lily immediately moved behind a large rock and began scanning the area. "Max, is the area around the time machine secure?" she asked, her gaze filled with anxiety. Max, after setting up his devices, said, "The area around the time machine appears to be secure for now, but we don't know when the T-Rex might return. We need to be careful while we wait for it," he said, his eyes quickly scanning the device's screen. The thought of the T-Rex potentially being nearby filled me with intense anxiety. As I looked around, the clouds in the sky were growing darker. The tension in the air suggested that a storm might be approaching. "We need to move quickly," I said in a panic. "Let's secure the area and figure out where we'll hide if the T-Rex comes back." Lily closed her notebook and carefully examined the surroundings. "We need to find cover quickly. If the T-Rex returns, we need a place to protect ourselves," she said, her eyes trembling. Max adjusted a few settings on his device by pressing a series of buttons. "I have a few minutes to prepare the time machine. In the meantime, we need to secure the area and come up with a plan to keep the T-Rex away," he said. While checking the area, I noticed a pit among the giant trees. "That pit could make a good hideout. Let's move there," I said, pointing to Lily and Max. Lily immediately started moving towards the pit. "Going there is a good idea. We can hide there and also keep an eye on the T-Rex," she said, carefully pushing aside the leaves that had fallen on the path. Max, while placing his device for final adjustments, said, "The time machine will be ready in a few minutes. Meanwhile, we need to stay vigilant and come up with a plan." We moved into the pit and concealed it with large rocks and giant leaves to minimize visibility. Inside, our breaths quickened. We began to watch the area where the T-Rex had passed. "We need to be quick," I said, keeping my ears open for any sign of the T-Rex's possible return. "Once everything is ready, Max, we need to get to the time machine immediately." Lily nodded silently, saying, "Yes, and we need to be very careful. Everything could happen in an instant," her eyes scanning the surroundings. As we continued to observe carefully, I felt the tension inside me as the possibility of the T-Rex's return loomed. At this moment, we knew that time was slowing down and every second was crucial. We only had a few more minutes to ensure everything went right. Max was working intensely on the time machine. His hands moved quickly over the buttons, and he scanned the screen, trying to get the machine operational again. The flickering lights of the screen were filled with a series of codes and graphics. As sweat accumulated on his face, his eyes constantly moved over the screen. Lily, moving quietly, found a few large rocks. As she threw the rocks to the ground, she said, "Tommy, I'm throwing a large rock to distract it. We need to divert the T-Rex's attention so Max can buy more time." The sounds of the rocks hitting the ground echoing rapidly. The rocks tumbled into the depths of the forest, creating a loud noise. The sound caused the giant T-Rex to suddenly turn its head. Its enormous head was directed towards the area where the rocks had fallen, and its gigantic eyes scanned the surroundings. "We need to draw its attention elsewhere now," I said, watching Lily's rock throwing. I saw a promising sign that the T-Rex's attention had shifted and its direction had changed. Max, working intensely on the time machine, saw the data on the screen changing rapidly. "We need to succeed now. I'm repairing the time machine, but we need to get out of here within seconds," he said, his voice conveying both hope and urgency. The T-Rex had quickened its steps towards the area where the rocks had fallen. Each step shook the ground, and its massive body trembled. Noticing this, Lily threw another rock to further divert its attention. "Tommy, be careful. The T-Rex has shifted its focus. This will give Max a better chance," she said with determination in her voice. Lily, as she threw the rocks, said, "Tommy, be alert. You need to carefully listen to the sounds of the rocks." The rocks created a series of noises right behind the T-Rex, causing the creature to quickly turn its head. The massive beast moved with large steps towards the noise, turning its head to scan the area where the rocks had fallen. Meanwhile, Max was working intensely around the time machine, with its trembling devices and flashing buttons. "I need half a minute. Watch me carefully. Everything has to go perfectly," he said seriously. Numbers and graphs flashed rapidly on the time machine screen. We could feel that everything might collapse at any moment. A burst of light erupted on the time machine screen, and the device's lights began to flicker rapidly. "Ready. The time machine is working," Max said, his face shifting from worry to relief. At that moment, a bright light enveloped us, and the T-Rex, having completely diverted its attention to the rocks, turned and moved back into the depths of the forest. Amid the beams of light and brightness, everything quickly faded away. When I opened my eyes, we found ourselves safely back in our own time. We were surrounded by the familiar comforts of technology and modern life. "We did it," I said, my eyes shining. "We made it back." Max closed his devices and took a deep breath. The time machine worked, and we survived this adventure. "We really dodged a big danger," he said, his eyes showing a tired but satisfied expression. The world of dinosaurs was full of many dangers and excitement. Our faces still bore the traces of victory and fatigue, but our excitement was intact. When we returned to our lab, we gathered as a team to discuss how things had progressed. Max, carefully examining the time machine, said, "We have a lot of work to do. For our next adventure, I need to make a more reliable and faster device. We might need to study dinosaurs up close this time," he said, placing a series of small parts on the device. Lily glanced at the notes on the table and said, "What I've written is very important. These notes will be a great help in our future explorations," as she organized her notebook. Her eyes were filled with the detailed and comprehensive drawings and notes she had been working on. She wanted everything to be thorough and complete. I moved to the corner of the room and started examining the dinosaur samples we had collected earlier. As Dino Explorers, we began preparing for our next adventure. Who knows, maybe on our next journey, we'll encounter another dinosaur species. Stay tuned to join us in our adventures. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.